Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And today I'm excited because I've got a Spyderco that is not your everyday average Spyderco. This one comes to me by way of Blade Op. Shout out to them. And by the way, guys, if you want to pick this up, I will go ahead and drop the links in the description, maybe even in the pinned comment down below. It is currently available, which I think is pretty darn cool. Inside the pouch is a Spyderco that I've wanted to check out for so long, for the last year, in fact, ever since it came out. However, with most things, with most nice knives, it was released and then it sold out, and then it was released and then it was sold out, and now they're finally back in stock. For how long? Who knows? This is the Spyderco Stovepipe, a David Ridbomb creation, collaboration with Spyderco, made in Taichung, Taiwan. For those of you who are uninitiated, you might be thinking, well, wait, why would you be excited about that? Wouldn't you want one of the American-made Spydercos? Well, I love my American-made Spydercos. It is common knowledge in the knife community that the best fit and finish Spydercos, the most premium versions, especially their collaborations with well-known designers, come out of their Taichung, Taiwan factory. And here it is, guys, the Spyderco Stovepipe. Oh man, this is one that I've wanted to check out, and it doesn't, aesthetically speaking, I will say this right now, it does not disappoint. This is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. We're looking at an overall length of 6 3/4 inches, a 2.8 inch long blade, which is made out of CPM 20 CV, heat treated to Spyderco's standards, which is to say it's been done right. The blade is what they're calling a dark stonewash finish, and the titanium handle scales are also a dark stonewash finish. We have a titanium inset backspacer, 3D milled titanium pocket clip. It's a frame lock. It, of course, has the Spyderco trademarked opening thumb hole. They do call that a thumb hole. And then we're looking at the Chris Reeves integral lock. And what that is, for those who are unaware, is the pivot is oversized and it also acts as an over travel stop. On the lockup, we're looking at about, oh boy, I want to say that's about 55%. Yeah, that is no joke. Quick QC check here. How's the blade centering? It's perfect. How's the lockout? It feels like a fixed blade. Yeah, there is no play there. That is perfect lockout, which we definitely want to see. The blade shape is going to be somewhere between a Wharncliffe and a cleaver. Most people would call this a cleaver. And we're looking at a hollow grind, which is very deep, and it gives you this really slicey edge. Ergos in the hands. We're looking at a couple cutouts right here, and these very straight angular lines. So how does it feel in the hands? It feels decent. You know, 6.75 inches is not necessarily that big, 6 3/4 inches. I have average size hands for a full grown male, which is to say I wear large size gloves. And yeah, I get a full 4-finger grip. The natural position on here is actually a choked up position. They didn't bother with a 50-50 finger choil because of the shape of the blade just kind of brings you into a choked up position. It has this swell in the spine of the blade, which naturally fits your thumb. That's pretty cool. I actually really like that. Normally I do like some jimping, and back here you don't necessarily get jimping, but you do get this kind of, I'm not going to call that a swedge, but this milling right here at the top of the blade, and then a little bit of sawtoothing right there. Not enough where I would actually call that jimping, but yeah, you can get a pretty competent grip right there for some controlled cutting. But let's be honest, the way that you use this knife is like this. I could see this being very good for draw cuts, pull cuts, everyday chopping and slicing. This is going to be really good. It's almost a Spanish tip razor up here at the point. And when you look at that, the way that they did the grind actually allows it to stay nice and thick all the way to the tip. And the tip is slightly pointy. That is going to be very useful for getting into boxes, cutting open tape, and slicing just about anything that you want. Let's do a quick couple of comparisons. First up, against my Blade Ops exclusive Spyderco PM2 that I've added some scales to. This is the Emerson Wave Edition. As you can see, the PM2 is much longer. How about up against something like the Demco AD 20.5? 20.5 is still longer. And then finally, for giggles, how about this? There we go. The Devo Nip, another very good utility style knife. Yeah, it's bigger than your Devo Nip. That's cool. Now, I know that it's not very common to see, but this one does have bearings. That's right. It is running on bearings. Now, typically on these do tend to come a little bit over tightened from the factory. Now, because this is a loaner from Blade Ops, I'm not actually going to loosen this up. However, there are several videos on YouTube where it shows that if you just loosen the pivot a little bit, it's going to go ahead and make the action a little bit more guillotine-y. As it is right now, it's not super drop shut, but these do tend to break in and give you a really nice action. Right now, it feels very controlled, very industrial. This dark stonewash finish is absolutely gorgeous, and it adds a lot of dimension to both the handle scales and the blade. This is not a cheap piece, and in fact, usually the ones that you get from the Taiwan factory are not typically very cheap at all. In fact, this one is just shy of $450. I know that is a big chunk of change. Here's the deal. This is going to be one of those knives that they release, and like many other knives from their Taichung, Taiwan factory that are designer collaborations, I don't think that this will be in production for forever. Will they run it throughout 2024? Maybe. Will they discontinue it halfway through the year? Maybe. Just look at some of their other collaborations that have been done in Taiwan, like, for example, the Spyderco Rubicon or the Spyderco Magnitude. Those were run for a few years, discontinued, and then we never saw them ever again. I'm a huge fan of knives that stretch the limits of what we know as normal, and lately Spyderco does a lot of slab style handle scale construction knives, and this one is not quite slab style. As you can see, we've got a little bit of chamfering on these edges in the back and then some contouring. If you look, you'll notice that the scales kind of curve over, and that actually does help with the ergonomics in the hand. That isn't to say that the ergonomics are perfect. There is one spot on here that missed some chamfering, and that is this corner right here. Anytime you see a corner on a knife get trisected by 3 different lines, that's a corner that should be chamfered, and in this case they didn't. Is it sharp? No. You know, the fit and finish on here is perfect, but they should have rolled that corner over, and that would have been great. You do notice it in a choked up position if you put a lot of pressure on this index finger right there, but in a fully choked up grip with your thumb on the spine, it actually relieves pressure from that point, and it doesn't necessarily create a hot spot. It's just a corner which is a little more pokey than I would prefer. If you have bigger hands than me, which is to say XL size hands, your pinky could actually rest on this corner right there, which I think is ingenious, because if you've got the sausage fingers, you can go ahead and rest your pinky right there. That's actually something that I really enjoy about my Devo Nip, which is not typically a full grip knife, is that they have this cutout right here at the back, or this slanted line, which allows you to get a nice spot for the pinky to fill in. Now on this one, I don't have that issue because my hands actually allow for a full 4-finger grip, plus the thumb on the spine of the blade. Superb control on this guy. That's fantastic. Now, I mentioned that this is a David Ridbomb design, and it follows the lines of his very, very popular custom knife called Bill the Butcher, which is a character out of a movie which I dearly love called Gangs of New York. And Gangs of New York, Bill the Butcher is the antagonist, and he wears this stovepipe hat. And because they didn't want to carry the name over from the custom and call this the Spyderco Bill the Butcher, they called it the Spyderco Stovepipe in reference to that character's stovepipe hat. If you've watched that movie, let me know in the comment section down below. One of my favorite movies of all time. Gangs of New York it's fantastic. There's a lot of things to like on this knife. I love the fact that this is, by all means, a small knife. It's not even 7 inches long. You saw the comparisons. Regardless, because of that, it doesn't feel like a knife with those dimensions. If I were to just tell you, hey, it's a knife with, 6 3/4 inches overall length, and, the blade isn't even 3 inches, you'd probably be thinking of a knife that didn't fit very well in the hand and that you might not even get a full 4-finger grip on. This feels big for its size. That is very impressive to me, the amount of jujitsu that they did to make that work. I'm also a huge fan of this blade. This blade it's awesome. And it's like you get a little pry bar here at the tip. David Ridbomb is on record saying that you can, in fact, use this to wave it out of your pocket. So when you're pulling it out of the pocket, you angle it a little bit and you can use that to catch the edge, and it will actually wave the blade out of your pocket. I'm not a huge fan of that. If you want to wave, just design a knife with the wave already built in, like this one. But it's also not something that I'm going to ding it for any points with, because I do actually like it. It is almost a bit of a pry bar, almost a flathead screwdriver. And let's be honest, sometimes when we use our knives, we're not using them for cutting tasks. We're just using them because they're the closest thing to a pry bar that we have in our pocket. Please, please, please carry a pry bar as well. It will definitely save your knives at the end of the day when you need a pry bar. The design cues on here are unique, despite the fact that this is not an uncommon blade shape in this cleaver style blade. The way that this is executed is very well done in a very minimalist, conservative sort of fashion. Look at the extra chamfering, the extra milling on the handle skills. Look at the contouring on those handle skills. You don't see a whole lot of Spyderco knives that have titanium that are contoured like this, but this one definitely is. The amount of milling and the amount of work that goes into getting the titanium to do that, where it rounds over, is not cheap. It's not cheap to do at a high level, and that's one of the reasons why this knife is not cheap. But that isn't to say that I love absolutely everything about this knife. Far from it. There's actually 2 things specifically that I am not a huge fan of, and I've already mentioned one of them. Whenever you have 3 lines that meet a point, it's going to create a harsh corner unless you chamfer it over, and they didn't. They could have, but they didn't. And if you look at the rest of the lines, it's kind of hard to show, but they did actually chamfer the rest of these lines. So why didn't they do it on that corner? I'm not necessarily sure. The second thing, which is not a huge deal because Spyderco does it all the time and we still buy them en masse, is the fact that this is not a single-sided captive pivot. This is a double-sided non-captive pivot. I don't know why they keep doing that. And honestly, I don't know what the thought was behind it, but it should be a single-sided captive pivot. Spyderco really needs to get on board with that. We don't have a ton of billboarding on this blade, but we do have a little bit. And I think that the Spyderco logo on a single-sided captive pivot would be a fantastic spot for it. Overall, I can see why this knife costs just shy of $450, and I can see why they sold out and they sold out again, and it's taken so long for me to actually have the opportunity to get one on my review desk. It is a shame because at that price point, it's going to relegate this to people who either really like the Build the Butcher custom knife but just don't have $1,800 to spend on one, or the Supreme Spyderco collectors. And let's be honest, there is a ton of Spyderco collectors out there. But you let me know what your thoughts are. Have you checked this one out? Do you have one? Did you buy one? Is this one that you were hoping to get or hoping to see? Let's have a conversation in the comments section down below. If you've watched this far, you might as well go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And oh yeah, if you want to watch more awesome knife and EDC content, click on one of the videos that pops up next.